Hey guys, welcome to my newest video for today. For today's video I'm going to be doing another movies I've been watching. So this is going to cover all the movies that I watched over January and February. So I think I watched about 29 movies all up in. So I'm just going to get straight into it, and starting off on the first, we have the movie that kickstarts all of my my movie watching years, and that is Spaceballs. I've talked about this movie dozens of times on this channel. It's one of my favourite movies. I just love it, and I could easily put it on and rewatch it right now. So Spaceballs gets 5 out of 5 stars. Then I decided to actually this year I want to watch as many Batman, Bat Family related movies as possible. So a lot of this is going to be animated based, but some of it will cross over into live action and that. So to start off with that, I decided to watch the Lego films, so because Batman is a supporting character in the Lego movie. So I watched the Lego movie, which I really enjoy. I think this is a sort of a fun adventure film, and yeah, I love sort of all the meta references in these and that. So I gave the Lego movie 4 out of 5 stars, and then I of course then went on to the Lego Batman movie, which is actually my favourite of these Lego films, and I gave that one 4.5 out of 5 stars. I sort of like, again, it's just, I don't know, I just really love this film, and sort of Batman sort of finding, his own family again, and sort of learning to get close to people. Because I always find that aspect of his character to be quite fascinating, and just he tries to keep people at arm's length. So he's because he thinks he's protecting them, but in reality it's I think it's just, as the film sort of says, he's sort of afraid to be close to people. But yeah, I really like that. And of course, he's the whole thing with the Joker, and it's where he's like, I don't have an arch enemy who's well, he thinks he does. He thinks it's Superman, but he doesn't. He's like, I don't have a traditional arch enemy, and because Joker's like, oh, it's you and me, and he's like, no, and so I really do like that whole banter thing. But yeah, it's Lego Batman movies, just great, and I gave that one 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then yeah, of course, the Lego Movie 2, the second part. This one I find is interesting. It's probably my least favourite in terms of the overall story, but I think it still has its fun moments, and yeah, it's I do like the whole with the dinosaurs on the spaceship and everything with all of that, but yeah, it does have a few interesting scenes and that, but I still gave it 4 out of 5 stars, but it's not, again, one of my favourites and that. And the last of the ones that I got to was Lego DC Batman Family Matters. Now, and this doesn't actually have anything to do with the Lego movies or anything like that, but because it was Lego related, I did stick it in sort of this part of the rewatch. I just love this. It's sort of it's like a, well, okay, I don't like that Tim Drake's not in there, because watching it you can sort of tell that Damien was meant to be Tim, because it's even Tim's costume and everything, but they swapped out the characters. So I just sort of found that part really interesting, after reading comics and then sort of knowing the differences. But I did still really like seeing all the rest of the Bat family, and it's a very interesting origin take for Red Hood, because it doesn't quite have the same brutal ending. How Jason Todd became Red Hood in the comics, it doesn't quite happen the same way, but it's yeah, it was just, I don't know, I just really love this one. And yeah, the sort of you got the whole plot line where Bruce wants to give all his time to being Batman and things like that, and then yeah, of course that goes horribly wrong when he decides to steal the company. And yeah, I don't know, I just really enjoy this one, so I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I just love it. It's great. So at least that's what I think. So so that's sort of the first lot of franchise-related movies that I've been watching. Then I rewatched all of my Les Mis musical adaptations that I've got, because I'm trying to watch, like go through the films I have, like the musicals that I have, and like other musicals as well. So mostly in my collection, but I will occasionally check out like films like that I don't own and things like that, like musicals I don't own. So but to start with, I watched Les Mis the 10th anniversary concert at the Royal Albert Hall. I watched Les Mis the 25th anniversary concert, Les Mis the 2012 movie, and Les Mis the stage concert. Gave all of them 5 out of 5 stars. Yeah, you all know that I love Les Mis. It's my favourite musical. So, and then I watched Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds, The New Generation Alive on Stage. This is a more recent adaptation that came out. And yeah, again, this is another one that I love. So I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And so that was that one. And then randomly I also decided to check out Cinderella on Disney Plus. So this is the musical adaptation with Brandy. I'd never seen it before, so this was something that was sort of new to me, and I honestly loved it. I don't know why I never tried to track it down and check out this version, like, because it has a great cast, like Brandy, Whitney Houston, Victor Garber, you've got Whoopi Goldberg, Bernadette Peters. Yeah, so I loved it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. So sort of then going, I suppose, and then I rewatched the Hunger Games series, since it's been a couple of years since I last gave the franchise a watch. So I watched the Hunger Games, Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and Mockingjay Part 2. Now my favourite of the series is Catching Fire. I sort of do love how they sort of did the how it explored sort of like the beginnings of the rebellion, and you know, the Capitol trying to stamp out the unrest, and also you got the 75th Quarter Quell and Katniss and Peter dealing with having to go back into the games, and yeah, and of course the whole the fact that they survived the Hunger Games the first time, and then where they stand in terms of relationships. But yeah, I just love this franchise as a whole, and it was quite interesting. Always going back to these films. So for me, I think it's Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 all get 4 out of 5 stars, and Catching Fire gets 4.5 out of 5 stars. And then I've also been rewatching in preparation for Godzilla vs. Kong. I rewatched Kong Skull Island, which I hadn't seen since the cinema. So, and I remember not liking it particularly at the cinema, but I did enjoy it more on a rewatch. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. I do love the actual 70s setting. It has a great soundtrack, and yeah, there's actually a lot more funnier moments in it than I realised, because I forgot John C. Reilly was actually in this movie. So I think I liked his character the most out of all of them, but it's yeah, so I did rewatch Kong Skull Island, and then I rewatched Godzilla. So yeah, I do quite enjoy Godzilla from 2014. So I give that one 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, sort of sort of how they sort of discover what's going on, and things like that, like the whole investigation, and yeah, and then of course you've got the monster attacks and Godzilla coming in, and it's yeah, I really enjoy it. I think it's a pretty solid action, like disaster action sci-fi film. So that one, and then I suppose next so talk about the movies that I saw in the past couple of months, even though I haven't actually been to the movies in over a month. So I've only got 4 films to talk about that I actually saw at the cinema, and they were Promising Young Woman, really good revenge style, I guess, drama, even if it could be quite frustrating to watch at times, especially in the last few weeks in Australian politics. If I don't know if anyone's been following what's been going on in Australian politics at the moment, but it has been really frustrating. So yeah, so it's sort of, I think it's quite interesting that I watched Promising Young Woman at the start of the year, and then all of this is going on in Australian politics. So yeah, I gave Promising Young Woman 4 out of 5 stars. Then I saw Summerland. So I was trying to do this here where I was going to the cinema once a week, but then I kind of didn't want to do that, and like I sort of went away from the whole picking a movie just for the sake of picking a movie. But I think I have, after a month of not going to the movies, I think I am going to go back to like trying to see at least one movie a week, even though in March there's actually quite a few films coming out that I do want to see. So but Summerland was quite an interesting one because it sort of follows, like, set during World War II. It's basically this small English countryside village, and they're sort of taking in children who've evacuated from London. And this one woman in particular, she, like, I guess she's she's really antisocial. No one else in the village likes her, and she ends up having to like foster this child from London, and she doesn't want to, but she soon sort of discovers that there's a connection there to someone she actually knew in the past. And yeah, I actually thought it was a pretty solid drama, like, thing. So I am glad I did end up seeing that one. So I gave Summerland 4 out of 5 stars. Then I watched Shadow in the Cloud. I actually thought this was quite an interesting World War II horror film. It's very short, like it's like an hour 20 minutes, so we don't really get a whole lot of character exposition, and there's some like stuff in there that you sort of have to take with a grain of salt, like, because you're like, yeah, don't overthink it, because you'll be like, there's no way this could have like ever happened. But they actually had some pretty good action scenes, and in particular where she's under the trying to cross the plane, that was actually quite nerve-wracking, like, watching that play out. So yeah, overall I did quite like it. I thought it was quite intense, and you know, you wanted to find out what was happening. So I gave Shadow in the Cloud 4 out of 5 stars. Then the last movie that I saw at the cinema was so far there was The Marksman, which is Liam Neeson's newest movie. It's a pretty standard, like, Liam Neeson action film, even though I was a bit frustrated by the ending, to be honest, because I felt like once it got to that point, I was like, but what about all these other plot points that you were meant to resolve? And yeah, it ended really weird, and I'm not sure if I liked the ending, but you know, the overall story was decent enough. I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So and then I guess sort of going into some films that I've watched for the first time. I watched Treasure Planet. That was I watched that on Disney Plus. I think I owned the DVD way back in the day, but I never got around to it. I had a lot of fun with Treasure Planet. It was sort of a different take on like the whole Treasure Island story, and I really ended up enjoying that one. So not my favorite Disney film, but it's like in terms of them more, I guess, like in the terms of early 2000s Disney, it's even though admittedly I haven't actually seen many of the early 2000s Disney films, but I did like that one. So I had that one, and then I ended up checking out the Jungle, which stars Daniel Radcliffe, and it's based on a true story about a group of guys who get lost in the Amazon rainforest, and it's about Daniel Radcliffe's character trying to survive after he gets separated on his, like, by himself. Some of, like, it's sort of interesting because the first half was about, like, sort of him trying to convince this group to go on this trip with this guy who, like, promises that they can go and find this lost tribe that no one's ever seen, and then when they sort of get further into the jungle, it's like the trek becomes a lot more dangerous, and, like, they're not, I think if I remember right, there's, like, some of them weren't all that experienced, like, in terms of intent. Like, I think they were all, like, backpackers, and, like, they'd done camping and things like that, but I think for a couple of them that hadn't really tackled the Amazon rainforest, so it's sort of dealing with those elements, and then, yeah, obviously post-separation dealing with trying to stay alive, and I think it was, like, 3 weeks or something like that, and it was, yeah, it was quite an interesting story. I gave that one 4 out of 5 stars, so that was Jungle. And then I watched Occupation, so this was another one I checked out on Netflix, because I also watched Jungle on Netflix because that was put on there. Now, I'd watched this film because the sequel was coming out, and at that point I had planned to go to the cinema, and then I didn't go to the cinema to see it. So I just watched the first one, which is basically an alien invasion takes place in, well, it's mostly focused in Australia, but these aliens take over this small country town, and watching it made me think of Tomorrow When the War Began, and I was getting sort of those vibes from the story, but overall it was pretty decent. So you sort of follow like this group who managed to escape the initial invasion, like they avoid being captured, and then they form, like, their own resistance basically. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I do want to check out the sequel at some point. So then, well, actually, I think the rest of these movies that were first-time viewings were all, with the exception of one, I think were actually all Netflix films. So I watched The Old Guard. I know I'm, like, months late to the party on this one, but I thought this was, like, a fun, I guess, sci-fi take on, like, sci-fi action adventure film. Really liked Charlize Theron in this one, so it was, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I've watched Mank. I think a lot of people have been mixed on this one, but I thought it was quite interesting, sort of seeing the behind the scenes, like, play out with Citizen Kane, which I think I want to almost go back and rewatch Citizen Kane because it's been a few years since I've seen it. But I think that would be quite an interesting double feature, like watching Citizen Kane and Mank like together. But yeah, I did like it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I thought it was quite interesting. So it's like all shot in black and white, and you sort of get like all these flashback, like and that. But yeah, but I did think it's like sort of like Hollywood politics and things like that, and I found it quite interesting. So there's Mank. Then I watched Outside the Wire, which is like a sci-fi, well, not really dystopian, but it's sort of set in this world where drones and that do most of the fighting, but because yeah, and then of course there's one guy who's like, he makes a wrong call and he ends up being sent to the front lines, and he sort of has to cope with that, and then he gets assigned to another like his captain ends up taking him on a separate assignment, and yeah, it's all these revelations start coming forward, and I quite liked this one. It was quite an interesting action film, that one. So I did give Outside the Wire 4 out of 5 stars, and probably one of my favorites that I've watched on Netflix. I watched Space Sweepers, which is a Korean sci-fi film. It kind of gave me Massive Firefly vibes, actually. It was Actually, no, it was like Firefly meets Elysium. That's what the whole story reminded me of. But it was, yeah, I did like the characters. I sort of liked sort of seeing them like sort of come together. It's like a found family type film, and yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I gave it, yeah, I think it's 4.5 out of 5 stars. I watched News of the World, Tom Hanks' newest movie. I don't normally go for westerns, but because this one's sort of getting a bit of buzz in the award season, I decided to check it out. And yeah, I thought this was a pretty solid drama. I really liked the slow build relationship between Tom Hanks' character and the kid's character. Like, I really did like that progression. It was also a very beautifully shot film. Like, you sort of really got that whole sense of isolation, and because this is like set in post-Civil War, so I thought that was quite interesting as well. But yeah, it was not bad for like just sort of like giving it a like sort of checking it out, and that's why I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Then the movie that I watched, that wasn't on Netflix, I watched this on Disney Plus Star, and that was Deep Rising. Now, I'd sort of heard about this film, and since I was like going through the films that are on, like that have been added to Disney Plus, I thought I would check this one out. I knew going in it wasn't going to be like, you know, the greatest film ever, but I thought it could be like a fun action, like horror film. And it was actually pretty decent. Well, not say decent, but it was more decent than what I was expecting. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Like, it was cheesy, but it actually had some pretty good kills in there, and it was, like, I liked the whole, like, them being stalked by these creatures, and, yeah, them trying to survive, like, being on this ship, and yeah, it was and I'm actually surprised that they didn't do a sequel to it, because I was like, oh, check out and see if there's a sequel, and the sequel was never made, even though it sort of sets up for one right at the end. So I thought that one was quite interesting. But yeah, so that was Deep Rising. And then the last of the movies that I watched was a first time viewing. It was one that I watched out of my own collection, and that was The Rhythm Section with Blake Lively and Jude Law. Again, I thought this one was like a pretty solid like action revenge thriller, and I sort of really liked the two main characters like sort of working together, sort of training to become like Blake Lively's character training to become an assassin. Like, I liked that it didn't happen straight away. Like, she sort of had this traumatic experience happen to her, and she has to get clean, and she has to like find this drive to actually want to go after the people who killed her family. So yeah, I did quite like this one, and yeah, I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So, and then just some other random movies that I've watched, or like I rewatched. I rewatched The Post. I think this one's like, yeah, quite a fascinating look into the government's relationship with the press, and sort of like where it's like where you sort of have to be an outsider looking like I guess looking objectively at sort of with stories and things like that. And of course I really like Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks in this one. I think yeah, it's quite a really fascinating story, and yeah, it's one I enjoy rewatching a lot. So I rewatched The Post. I rewatched Gravity, a great sci-fi thriller. Really love this one, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I also rewatched The Martian, again, another of my favourite sci-fi films. Also one of my favourite books, for being honest, but I gave The Martian 5 out of 5 stars. Like, I just love watching this movie. It's I think it's a great adaptation. That one, and then I think that was it. I think I've covered all the movies that I've watched over the course of the last 2 months. So I'm just going to stop it here. Thank you guys for watching, and until my next video, I will see you guys next time. Bye!